Hi and welcome to WEH Videos. My name is Skip and this is part 2 on how to use your autopilot. So if you haven't watched part 1 and you're new to flight simulators, I suggest you watch that first. So last time we looked at the Cessna 172 and now we're looking at the Baron 58. And you'll notice things are quite a bit different in this layout. For one, this is a twin-engine airplane. But as far as autopilot's concerned, let's take a look at the controls here. First off, you'll notice that we have our selection for what autopilot we want to use down here. And we have an annunciator or an indicator for what we are using in our autopilot up here. We have AP, that's for autopilot, NAV, and GS is for glide slope. And these are selected down here. The on-off button is right here. And again, your autopilot is not going to operate, not function, if you do not have this autopilot button clicked and it displayed up here in autopilot. You'll notice that the nav radios look the same as they were in the Cessna 172. However, when we look at NAV1, you'll notice that the VOR indicator looks a whole lot different than the NAV2. In the Cessna, these were both the same. This is an HSI, Horizontal Situation Indicator. And here this works the same as the VOR, or NAV1, NAV2 radios, but here we have an arrow which is going to point to our course that we want to fly. We have the CDI needle, remember that in NAV2, that this is a CDI needle here in the HSI. So when we're flying directly on course, this needle here will be lined up with this needle here. So that's the NAV1 radio. The NAV2 is the same. And the ADF radio is pretty much the same as in the Cessna. One thing we haven't talked about yet in autopilot is the glide slope feature. And you can see here on NAV2 radio, and this would be the same for NAV1, you have a horizontal needle here. Also on the HSI, or the horizontal situation indicator, you have these little tabs here on the left and right side, and they are also glide slope indicators. Now I don't want to go into what the glide slope is or how that works yet, but this is part of an ILS landing system, and when you tune your radio to an ILS frequency, then you will fly this glide slope. When these needles are right here in the middle, that means you're right on the glide slope, and it'll take you right down to the runway. But just a quick overview, if this was the runway here, there would be a radio signal, an ILS signal, and it would send out a radio beam on roughly 3-degree slope. And as long as you are on this glide slope, then you will fly straight down to the runway. And if I have time in this video, we'll go over that a little more in depth. Alright, let's take a look at the big jets. First of all, the autopilot panel is up here, nice and convenient, easy to find. So we can start with the localizer and approach buttons. We have our vertical speed. Here you dial in the vertical speed you want. And here we have the auto throttle. You dial in the indicated airspeed or the Mach setting that you want. And then we have the heading select. You dial in the heading that you want. And LNAV and VNAV. So that's lateral navigation and vertical navigation. Alright, let's take a look at another jet. This is a small Learjet 36 from xhangar.com, and you should start noticing things that look really familiar. Up here we have our autopilot selection buttons. We have heading, localizer, back course, wing level flight, auto throttle, vertical speed, glide slope, and altitude. Something different here on our nav radios, they don't have the same look. But you'll notice I've tied them together here, both NAV1 and NAV2. use the same indicators. Here we have an HSI, and up here we have a glide slope. So this is a little bit different, but they all work the same. You can see the CDI needle a little better here in the HSI indicator. When we are on course, then these needles here will be lined up. And then you'll notice these buttons should look familiar. We have the flight director off on auto, and then we have the NAV1, NAV2, and GPS select. So that's it for the little Learjet. Before we can use our autopilots and our nav radios, we need to know where to find VORs and DMEs to fly to. So let's just take a look at a sectional chart. And you can find these at skyvector.com. What you do is type in a location. I have typed in KSFO San Francisco. You click on the Go button and it'll take you to that airport. Now, VORs and VORs with DME have a compass rose around them. So you can see this, I hope, this little line here with the different radials coming off of it on this circle. Here's another one here. If we come out here, we can find the Modesto VOR. It's right here. And up here, we can find the Manteca VOR. Manteca is 116.0 on your nav radio. San Francisco is 115.8, and so on. So this is where you can find your VORs. So you can plan flights like this. You can scroll out and pick VORs to fly to. If you wanted to fly from San Francisco down to Los Angeles, you can find some VORs and put them in your radio, and away you go. Now, to get an ILS for your landing at the airports, you need to get an approach plate, and there we can go to airnav.com/airports. Here you can type in an airport, so let's just put in KSFO and we'll hit get airport information. And here we have all the airport information. Everything you need to know about the airport you'll find here. But if you scroll down to the very bottom, and you're going to find your runway information. Here we have instrument approach procedures. So let's take a look at ILS or localizer runway 28 right. And we can download that PDF file, and you can save it. And this will give you all the frequencies you need and everything you need to know to do an ILS approach. And here it is. Localizer 111.7. This is ILS, lock runway 28 right, which we are going to fly into in just a moment. So we have to tune our nav radio to get that. So here's a couple of websites I would suggest you get familiar with. Learn how to use them. I have done several videos on this kind of stuff. I've done a video on how a nav radio and a VOR work together, how to use nav radios, plan a VOR to VOR flight. That's a 4-part series there. And then how to use the Garmin 530, which will help you use these nav aids. And I have a few others, so I suggest you search my channel and watch some of these videos. They'll really help you, I hope. Alright, I'm going to give you a little demonstration on an ILS approach. And San Francisco Airport is right here. And let's take a look at our approach plate. We want to turn our radio to 111.7 to pick up the localizer for runway 28 right. And you'll also notice here it says 283. That's the course. So we need to set our HSI up for 283. And we do that by turning this knob and bringing it to 283, which is right about there. And this helps us visually see how we are doing on our landing. Now, we don't have the autopilot engaged yet, so we don't have the radio selected. So we're going to do that, and I want you to watch the center part of this needle will come out. That is the CDI, course deviation. Also, I have set up NAV2 to go to 111.7. So NAV1 and NAV2 will both be tuned to ILS runway 28 right. So let's start the program. It will move our active radio to 111.7, and now you can see the course deviation needle is off to the right, so that tells us to get on track here. We need to fly over to the right and get this CDI needle to come over to the center. And you can see here also the CDI needle is over to the right, and the glide slope is a little bit above center too. And you can see our glide slope indicators right here saying we are a little bit low. And for intercepting an ILS, you want to come in underneath the glide slope and capture it. If you're too high, you may miss the glide slope and fly right over the airport. So now we set the autopilot and the airplane will fly right down to the runway. Alright, so let's unpause. We're going to turn the autopilot on and we're going to select approach. And now you can see we have approach set. The autopilot is taking control of the airplane. Now I have to tell you, if you notice that the glide slope is up here, first time I tried this I was too far to the left of the glide slope and it didn't pick it up, and I ended up flying right over the airport. So I had to come in a little bit lower because we were too far left to pick up the glide slope and we lost it. So now we are coming. I'm going to pause this now and we'll pick this up when we make the left turn towards the airport. Alright, you can see now we have picked up the glide slope and we're going to make a left turn here to heading 283. You can see the CDI needle here moving over and the CDI needle here moving. Here is our turn. And now we have the glide slope, we're in NAV, everything's great. We are going to do an ILS landing. One thing you need to know, this is not going to land the airplane for you. This is not auto land. This is just an ILS approach. When you get close to the runway and you can see it, you need to disengage the autopilot and fly the plane and land it yourself. So that's it on my little introduction to autopilot. Just remember they have different looks. You have HSI, horizontal situation indicators, that have a different look, but they all function the same. Here we have the glide slope, and the localizer is also right here. There's a little dot there that's going to move when you are on the localizer. We have our different buttons for the different auto features. We have a heading, so when you click that you will fly the heading that you are currently on. LOC is localizer. It could also be called NAV for nav. Auto throttle, you click that, it'll maintain the speed that you are set at. Vertical speed is the speed that you will descend or climb at. GS is glide slope. On the 58 we used approach and then it captured the glide slope. Here we can click to capture the glide slope. And then ALT altitude, you click that and it'll maintain the altitude that you are flying at. You saw on the big jets you had numbers you could dial in for all these things. So they're all different. So play around with your favorite airplane. Don't forget the flight director on off auto for your autopilot. If that's not in auto, nothing's going to work. And you have your NAV1, NAV2, and GPS source. If you like this, please click the like button. If you'd like to leave a comment or send me a message, that would be great. And thank you again so much for watching, and God bless.